Good morning, one and all. It's 10:04. This is the CPRIT Oversight Committee meeting. I believe this begins our 6th meeting. I wanted to start off by thanking the Oversight Committee for your diligence and energy through these past 5 and appreciate your endurance through this day and what's to come. So thank you all for your indulgence and endurance. So we're come to order. Will the Secretary of the Oversight Committee take the roll? Ms. Mitchell?
I will. Mr. Angelou?
Here.
Mr. Geiswright?
Here.
Mr. Guerin?
Here.
Mr. Holmes? Mr. Holmes has notified CPRIT he is unable to attend this meeting. Mr. Montgomery?
Here.
Dr. Mulrow?
Here.
Dr. Rice?
Here.
Dr. Rosenfeld?
Here.
Thank you. Chair will entertain a motion, if we could, to approve an excused absence for Mr. Holmes.
So moved.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries. Members, the draft minutes for the August 20 and September 3rd Oversight Committee meetings are available behind tab 1. And are there any corrections or changes for what's been circulated? Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
So we'll approve. That's approval for the August 20th meeting. It's motioned and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Any opposed? Then we'll also look for a motion for the September 3rd meeting. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second? All in favor? Thank you. Motion carries. First agenda item this morning is public comment. Public comment is critically important, particularly at this time as the board is undertaking to look and establish our priorities for the agency and its cancer research and prevention programs. CPRIT was created to help Texans. Our meeting with public comment underscores our commitment to transparency and accountability. And so at this time, the chair would like to recognize Mrs. Nadine Craddock to address the Oversight Committee as the first public comment this morning.
Is this where you want me?
Fine. Just push that button, make sure your mic's on.
I think it's on. Yes. I think it's on. Okay, thank you. May I move this over? Will it still get me? Yes. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and members of the CPRIT Oversight Committee for taking time to listen to public comment today as you consider the agenda items. My name is Nadine Craddock, and I'm here as a passionate advocate for all children. As the Oversight Committee considers the adoption of program priorities today, I want to speak to you about the recommendations made by the CPRIT Advisory Committee on Childhood Cancer and the inclusion and focus on adolescent, juvenile, children's, and pediatric cancer by CPRIT. I applaud all that CPRIT has done to uphold the mission which Texans entrusted to you when voters approved Proposition 15 in 2007 and the management of $3 billion in bonds to fund cancer research and prevention programs and the implementation of the Texas Cancer Plan. The groundbreaking juvenile, children's, and pediatric cancer research and programs that have been awarded CPRIT grants are incredibly promising. But we need more grants, more research, and more promising results. I know that there are research scientists out there, and applications would be forthcoming with a little guidance and encouragement and support. CPRIT must do more to encourage the research geared toward adolescent, juvenile, children's, and pediatric cancer. It would be incredible if researchers felt encouraged to submit grant applications for research examining pediatric tumors or applications that would support clinical trials that would identify new and better ways to treat childhood tumors. Nationwide, the funding for children's or pediatric cancer research is being chipped away, as you all know. The truth of the matter is that the number of children inflicted with cancer is too low to entice any pharmaceutical companies to invest money in research and to sponsor clinical trials. Similarly, adolescent and young adults fall into this special needs group as well. It would be extraordinary if researchers felt encouraged to submit grant applications for research examining adolescents and young adult treatments. Their survival rate is inferior to that of children and older adults. Their response to therapy is unique to their age, and their participation in available clinical trials is extremely low. Any research that could examine these unique issues would be critical to the future success of adolescent and young adult treatment. CPRIT is the mechanism to answer these funding deficiencies and could incentivize clinical trials, clinical research infrastructure, and data management in these areas. We are curing about 70 to 75% of kids with cancer, but we must do better with our children. Texas could and should take the lead because we're Texas. With the tremendous growth and the future projected growth in all these ages groups, we should be the one to lead the nation. We want all of our kids to survive. Survivorship is a specific research topic unique to pediatric, childhood, and juvenile cancers that is dear to my heart. It would be equally incredible if researchers felt encouraged to submit grant applications for researching survivorship. We may cure cancer, but the long-term effects of radiation and chemo are equally as devastating. Kids are treated at such a young age, and the effects of treatment on their body are virtually unknown and not well understood by scientists. Yet later in life, these same kids are developing severe, life-threatening complications, or another form of cancer emerges. My own family has been touched by cancer scares, which we believe was due to early childhood exposure to radiation. So what do we tell Manda Maxwell, the 33-year-old wife and mother of two, as to why, after battling and beating cancer at the age of 5 years old, the cancer resurfaced when she was 28 years old and required the amputation of her leg to save her life? And even more devastating now, 5 years after winning her second battle with cancer, Manda is facing cancer a third time in her spine. Her cancer is an extremely rare form of sarcoma, but she and her family are determined to beat it. My friends and my family have been touched by Manda's story. But what do we tell her and why? Sadly, we cannot tell her and others like her anything because proven scientific research has not been done. The question just lingers in my mind, along with scientists, as to why complications or new cancers are happening to our youngest survivors. CPRIT research grants can help deliver those answers. I am thrilled with the recommendations made by the CPRIT Advisory Committee on Childhood Cancer. These recommendations deserve much praise, and I would encourage the Oversight Committee to thoughtfully and thoroughly consider these suggestions and incorporate them into grant funding opportunities and priorities. I'm elated to learn CPRIT plans to invest a larger part of its annual budget toward finding cures for those rare and hard-to-treat cancers, as many of those are juvenile and adolescent cancers. I truly believe in my heart that this is what the people of Texas intended CPRIT to do, and to be the leader, not only in Texas but in the nation, in cancer research. As you can tell, I am passionate about children's cancer. I believe our children deserve significant research attention, as they are the future of this state as well as this country. I sincerely thank all of you that serve on the Oversight Committee, and I appreciate the Advisory Committee for its work. I hope that you will provide these important funding opportunities for research and promoting opportunities to find a cure for this cancer. Thank you again for the opportunity to address the committee today, and many thanks for all that you do and for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Craddock, very much for those comments. We appreciate your passion and interest in this and for bringing that message to us. And would also add, you've seen the prioritization that we're working on, and that includes rare and childhood cancers, and that's movement. And also would share that we're very interested and have input from others as well about survivorship issues, and so that's also again sort of something I think we have an increasing focus on and interest in.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome, and I appreciate it. I would like to, if I may, just pass out my comments to everyone, if anybody would.
Yes, please.
Like to have it.
Thank you very much.
And I have them right here, and thank you again.
Thank you. I don't have any other record of any other requests for public comments. Are there other requests for public comments today? Seeing none, we'll proceed then. Let's move on to the Chief Executive Officer report, which will be tab 2, and ask Mr. Roberts to provide the Chief Executive Officer's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have with us today 3 new employees, I'm very happy to say. Our ongoing effort to staff up to our authorized level of personnel is advancing, and I'd like to, if I could, Donald Brandy, he'll be our new purchaser. Dina Fletcher, she's a new grant accountant. And Jeff Hillary, I think some of y'all may have already met him, is our new communications specialist. We're very excited to have these 3 professionals on board.
Welcome.
With that, I'd like to wish all of you a very happy anniversary. This has been a year, a great year. You've done, and quite a bit. And I think I'd like to spend the remainder of my presentation on exactly what you have done in the last year. On October 30th, 2013, the moratorium was lifted that had been in place for 10 months. And when you folks walked into your first meeting, you had quite a set of challenges ahead of you. There were 118 announced grants that had not been contracted. These were the frozen grants. There were 17 applications that were waiting for final review and approval. And we had not been able to take in any new applications for the previous 11 months. We had already begun, but could not fully implement the 51 state auditor recommendations from his report in January 2013. And we had considerable number of staff vacancies, major staff vacancies, from the permanent CEO position to the compliance officer, the product development officer, and several finance and compliance staff positions were vacant. We also, though we had begun to implement to the extent that we could without y'all, the major legislative changes from Senate Bill 149 passed by the last legislative session. Today, you are refocused on our mission, but in the last year, we've issued 29 requests for applications. Nearly 1,300 applications have been received. You have appointed 126 new reviewers, including for the first time 14 advocates pursuant to SB 149. You have awarded 147 grants. 421,000 Texans have been provided prevention and control services. 262,000 Texans received clinical services. 30 eminent cancer researchers have been recruited to Texas. We've got 9 of them that are still pending, but we remain optimistic that we're going to get those remaining 9. We have had 18 patents issued, with 41 that are pending. I am particularly proud of this chart. When you arrived, the number of counties that we were serving in our prevention program had withered. Previously, we were very proud that we'd covered the entire state, but as a result of the moratorium, our coverage of the state declined. But as a result of your approving of prevention awards, we now cover most of the state. We've still got a couple of holes to fill, but I'm confident that that state will be completely colored probably within the next 6 months. You have lived up to our commitment to greater transparency in the agency. We've moved to the Capitol Extension, these meetings, and I still, even today, received praise for us moving into this building. I have to add as a footnote, though, that for a while this is going to be our last meeting here because we have to make room for the real occupants of the extension, which is the legislature. I'm hoping that we will be able to continue our meetings at the coordinating board, which has the website webcasting capabilities that we enjoy here. Webcasting of your meetings has also been met with a wide amount of enthusiasm. I think that we get a lot of viewers back at the institutions waiting in anticipation to hear the results of their applications. In addition, conflict of interest information for each grant cycle is posted on our website. With actual respect to governance and the agency operations, you quickly, upon assembling elected officers, adopted a new code of conduct, adopted bylaws, amended the current bylaws, created 8 subcommittees, activated 3 dormant advisory committees, hired me and 13 new employees. You've held, I believe, Dr. Rice, 8 meetings, including today. And 38, the best I could count them the other day, 38 subcommittee meetings. And it cannot go without being noted, you have reviewed over 15,000 pages of meeting material between the meeting books and what you examine each quarter on the portal. You are accountable. Under your watch, CPRIT has implemented all 51 of the state auditor's recommendations. You have overhauled the state agency rules. They've expanded from 33 to 49, and the graphic that I always enjoy the most is when you came on board, our administrative rules were 40 pages. They are now 105. So we are a bureaucracy unto ourselves. Hopefully today you will authorize the release of a request for applications, request for proposals for a compliance program to further continue the strengthening of the overall compliance program under David Reisman. You have mandated and activated ethics training for the staff and yourselves. You have created dashboard metrics for each meetings. The current one is, I believe, the last item behind this current tab. And you have overseen the development of a Grantee Training Program that has a focus on customer service. You oversaw the development of the continuation of a robust audit program. During the last year, we have had 16 field audits of grantees, 8 internal audits of our operations, and 2 independent financial audits. And in preparation of this upcoming legislation, you've overseen the development of our biennial strategic plan and our budget request for the next 2 fiscal years. Looking ahead and in closing, and that is, I think, the best thing this agency does is looking ahead to see what we can do to make lives better for Texans. Our mission is to create and expedite and enhance the potential for a medical or scientific breakthrough in cancer prevention and cures. In implementing that mission, we will continue to be transparent and accountable in our operations and in awarding merit-based grants. And finally, I call to your attention what you already know, our journey is one step at a time. We will advance cancer prevention and treatment, one discovery after another. Progress is being made under your watch. That concludes my remarks, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Roberts. Are there any questions or discussion of Mr. Roberts? Thank you. Proceeding then, we'll go to the Chief Compliance Officer Report, tab 3. And the Chair recognizes Mr. Reisman to present the Chief Compliance Officer's report.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is David Reisman. I'm the Chief Compliance Officer for CPRIT. Part of my statutory duties, of course, is to report on the timely submission of required grant recipient reports. And as we've talked about in last meetings, we kind of got into a backlog of reporting that we needed to address. And at the last August meeting, we had quite a number of delinquent reports we needed to look more closely at. So really, the staff took a very comprehensive approach to this. Everyone on staff, the legal division, the program managers, Michael Brown and Ramona Magid, our grant compliance specialists, our grant accountants, all try to tackle this problem working with our grantees. And we've made a significant progress, as I'll report. And I'm going to go through some numbers here, but I'm going to update those numbers and tell you more recent numbers. They're coming down daily as we're working with our grantees. They're all complying with our request and working with us very closely. So reports are coming in very quickly. Currently, there's 18 financial status reports, current financial status reports that are outstanding. At the last August meeting, I reported 36 grant projects had not filed their FSRs by that deadline. And also, we talked about the circumstances of the moratorium. There was additional under the current financial status reports, other financial status reports that were backlogged as well, and that number at the last meeting was 180. That's now down to 25. Currently, also, there's 6 progress reports outstanding at the last meeting that was significantly higher as well. Additionally, on top of that, were additional along with the financial status reports and the progress reports, were the other annual reports that needed to be filed, the inventory reports, the matching certification reports, the historically underutilized business reports. That totaled 483 at the last meeting, and that's down to 66 at this meeting. Like I said, we've worked comprehensively with all our grantees. They've worked with us in supplying those reports. A number of those reports can't be submitted because of some software issues that our contractor SRA is still working through, but they're finalizing those fixes now, and so those remaining reports should be able to be filed soon. And to put that in perspective, of those 66 outstanding reports, I counted up all the different reports from all of our grantees that needed to be filed annually, and that's about 5,924 as of a date. And so the 66 that's outstanding only represents about 1.1% of all the reports, just to put it in perspective. And
so for clarity, about 99% of reports are up to snuff?
Yes, 99% of the reports are, have been filed and are up to date, and there's only, like I said, 66 outstanding at this time, and those are coming in very quickly as we speak. There's probably several reports coming in, and hopefully before the end of the month, those will be completed. And the only ones we're having difficulty with is some software issues, and the grantees can't file those, and that's being worked on now, and hopefully we'll get those within the next week or so, filed as well. So I wanted to let you know we have made great progress in that initiative. And so, but that has also allowed us as a staff to address some of the other things compliance wanted to do. I think we were hit with a lot of these delinquent reports. It took a lot of our time and focus working with grantees. Working with the grantees has improved communication with the grantees an awful lot. I think the working together between the grant accountants and the grant specialists and the program managers with the grantees has improved tremendously, and that's been a great asset to CPRIT. And I get compliments from our grantees grantees consistently. But with us catching up on these delinquent reports, we've been able to focus on other compliance matters that we've wanted to do, such as grantee desk reviews. And so our grant specialists have initiated desk reviews. We've completed several. We've got another 12 currently underway right now, and that gives us a chance to focus on certain areas, financial policies and procedures, budget and payroll records, that type of thing for grantees in a more preventative way. An audit is more, reactive, but in a more preventative way. We're reaching out to our grantees, asking to see certain records, focusing on certain targets, and working with our grantees and try to prevent problems in the future. So we've been able to start that initiative. It's gone very, very well. Additionally, we've been able to do some grantee training and get out. We've done 2 on-site trainings, one at Texas A&M and one at Baylor out in Houston, which have gone well. And that was a collaborative effort between legal and the grant accountants and the grant specialists, and it went very well. We also did another collaborative effort, was a webinar with over 100 grant recipient staff attending that from around the state. And so we went comprehensively through all these many new rules that are being implemented, common mistakes that in reporting and other issues that came up, and that webinar went very well. That was another joint effort. All of CPRIT staff really, I think, chipped in on that one. And finally, I worked with the communications team in producing a series of short videos. We've produced, the first one is online now, talking about relevant rule changes in an effort, and all the grant recipients were given notice of this video. It's just an effort to reach out and maybe try to target, a face-to-face type of thing, seeing a face, kind of a commercial type of thing, give some more of a personal contact to the grantees, and another way of reaching out and training the grantees. So we've been able to do a lot in these last several months since the last meeting, reducing our delinquencies, getting out and doing some preventative desk reviews, and some grant training. So I'm happy to answer any questions. Yes, sir.
David, that's a fantastic effort. Thank you. Of the 1% of the reports that are missing, are there any recalcitrant individuals or institutions?
No, I think right now we might be dealing with several that it may be just hard to get some background supporting information. From those grantees are looking for some information. Some are hard to file. We've reached out to all those institutions, and they're all being very compliant with us. And so I don't think there's any effort there not to provide reporting to us. I think we just got to get the rest in.
Thank you very much, Mr. Reisman. I would also note that I looked at a couple of those videos, and I think that's a very effective way to convey information about each of those segments. And so thank you for that, and congratulations on the work to get us down to that 1% range, which is, I know our goal is a 0% delinquency range, but 1% sounds like that might be what you'd expect of the progress and the noise of a very complex system with all kinds of moving parts.
Right.
So
thank you, sir. Thank you.
While David's still up here, I think I would like to make one little reference. We talked about the number of reports that they are required to file. I think we've discussed this in a couple of the subcommittees, but we have put together what we call a year in the life of a grantee. This is what a typical prevention awardee must provide to us, is a little bit less than an inch in terms of the volume. Academic research grantee, roughly the same amount. So the amount of work that goes into these reports is not minimal. Product development, because of 2 factors. One, they tend to be larger grants, but we also require 100% documentation of everything that they submit to us. Their reports, this is one grantee. And that one. So, other than the visual that provides, it does open up some questions. We are asked by grantees, why do we require so much more than NIH? What is the difference between us and NIH? And there are some differences that I won't go into here, but I think that as an agency, we need to evaluate again what it is that we require of these grantees in order to make sure that we are fully accountable and get the legitimate documentation we need to protect the taxpayers' dollars. But up to this point, when we've talked about filing FSRs and these other documents, there has not been a hard image of that in your mind. And I think that serves as a testament to the work that goes on behind the scenes on these reports. I think David and the staff have done an outstanding job in getting us to where we are today with it. I'm very proud of where we are. Again, our goal is 100% compliance. There may be a structural non-compliance that exists, but we have found the cooperation by all of the grantees to be outstanding. Yeah, they grouse, but they're getting the job done, and we as a staff appreciate it, and I, as a director, appreciate your work, David.
Thank you, sir.
Members, please.
Can I ask a question? Wayne, to the question the grantees asked, why do we require so much more than NIH? As we go through this process, are we also looking at ourselves to make sure we're not putting any unnecessary burdens on our grantees?
Yes, and I think we're now at a point to where we can begin to really evaluate the necessity of some of the reports. I'm not willing at this point in time to commit to backing away from any of them, but one of the major differences is we provide our funding on a reimbursement basis. NIH, NCI allow drawdowns, and ultimately there is documentation that goes on with those federal agencies. But before a single nickel goes out the door for CPRIT, we expect to see hard documentation. And I think Kristen and David could elaborate, or Cameron Eckel, our staff attorney who put together the report, could elaborate on it. But there are some differences that I think we need to look at in subcommittee to see what really is necessary. But at this point in time, I would not be comfortable backing away from our requirements until we've done a thorough analysis, and I certainly would not want to go back to the legislature and say we're backing off on what we require of the grantees.
Yeah, well, I think we all share the same commitment to accountability, but I also know that there's often value in examining ourselves and in just making sure that we're, because any burden we put on them at the end of the day ends up moving resources out of our mission and their mission.
Yes, sir.
So it's just something we ought to be aware of, and I certainly want to commend David and his team for the extraordinary catch-up job they've done. It's just amazing that in such a short period of time they've done so much. But I do think it's important to just have that in the back of our mind. Are there ways that we can accomplish our purposes and do it in a way that's less of a burden on us and less of a burden on them? We're all in this together.
The grantees remind me that almost every time I meet with them. Mm-hmm. And we will. I mean, your point is legitimate, and we will.
Mm-hmm. Thanks.
Anybody else have a comment or question? I was just going to do a couple things. You have a couple. One was, do we have a sense of what, as we looked at this in subcommittee, I got the sense that one of those major differences, again, was that we want to see all these receipts and all this accounting before we send checks out, and it's down to the $5 item that they're buying. I'm not sure if that's literally true, but something like that. It's very, very specific down to the nickel. Do we have a sense that the NIH reporting process, even though they pay maybe on a drawdown, so they're not having to initially provide all those, do they eventually have to provide that level of detail, or is my sense correct that at the end of the day their stack wouldn't be that 2,000 pages? I think that's 2,200 pages. And so I wondered if we know, and not that that's the only standard, but I just wondered if we have a sense of what their burden is, and maybe they don't have to report, or maybe they group the types of items so they can have one line item instead of 10 line items for 10 of the same things or something, or 10 similar things or whatever. Do we have a sense of that?
I know in looking through those reports, I think there was one where there was a receipt missing for $5.42. So
right.
I think we apparently do go down to the nickel.
Detail. Yeah. Any sense of volume on the NIH side? And I appreciate you may not have a good answer right now.
I don't know enough about NIH
no
right
problem.
now. I mean, there's so many differences. I hate to speak generally about it, but maybe we could look at that more specifically and talk next time.
Kristen, you and Cameron actually looked at it. Would you have something to add?
Yeah.
So I was going to add, Cameron Eckel, who is our staff attorney, had taken on this project after the last Oversight Committee meeting, and so she had done some investigation in terms of NIH reporting and also had spoken with some sponsored programs offices around Texas that have experience with both CPRIT and NIH. And we can provide you another update on it, but I think the sense is that no, you will not see that amount of detail for NIH.
And let me apologize, because actually the NIH stack would be the 1-inch stack. It's the product development non-NIH analogy, right? In other words, the product development wouldn't be analogous to the NIH. Well per se, it's a private company.
Yeah.
That would
NIH
be different
does
than an institution.
do SBIR grants,
Okay.
the small
All right.
business
All right.
grants. So there is a comparison between NIH
Okay.
and what CPRIT does, even with
Fair.
the companies that we fund. And so that could be
Okay.
something else that we investigate, because yes, when Cameron was doing her research, she was focusing on the universities and their sponsored programs offices. But even with the 1-inch stacks that we're talking about, I think that NIH reporting is less than.
Yeah. I guess when I look at the 1-inch stack for that, I'm less concerned if we were asking, obviously, every research award to do that, which we're not. That would be, tremendously burdensome. And the 2,200 pages does seem like a lot. I think so. It's the conclusion that we're going to continue to study ways to be more efficient in the reporting that we require, so that we respect, of course, the needs to audit, but on the other hand, respect the idea that the audit side of this is not where we're trying to generate jobs necessarily. Any other comments, Craig, please?
David, that 2,200 pages, that's pretty impressive. Is that something that's filed annually, every 6 months, every 3 months?
This is
A total
year
of
in
the
the life
year.
of
Annual. That's
years
years.
worth,
That's what they
an annual.
submitted in a year.
Yes.
So will one of the subcommittees kind of give us an update periodically through the year on this question? It seems like we have the concern and interest. I don't know how to, otherwise, I don't know where you want to leave that, but I'll leave it to you to report back to us on the status and progress of this analysis.
Okay, I think we should. And like I said, they're different. There's a lot of differences. I think it's less, but we should look at that more specifically and lay that out for the members in a chart, so it's more easily actually accurate and digestible.
Yeah, thank you. Any other question or discussion of Mr. Reisman? All right, thank you all. So let's move on to item 7, tab 4, the Chief Operating Officer report. Heidi McConnell is recognized. And as you come up, let me also say that, as I understand it, part of your staff is obviously involved in this whole reporting system too, so we thank you for the work of you and your staff to support this whole major piece of the work that we do here at CPRIT.
Thank you. Good morning, members. I'm Heidi McConnell. I'm the Chief Operating Officer, and under tab 4, you have information about our operating budget for FY14, the overview, end-of-year overview, as well as the operating budget for FY15. With regard to FY14, the year-end financial report, we expended about $12 million for operations, and you awarded another $276.5 million in grants. We also reported on our 6 key performance measures to the Legislative Budget Board for FY14, and we met or exceeded 5 of those measures. The one measure that we did not meet was the company relocations to Texas in the Product Development Program, and that was a result of the moratorium on grant awards. We made no grant awards for product development in the last year, and this measure is directly related to those awards and the companies actually locating to Texas. For fiscal year 2015, the operating budget is $297.1 million after the required transfer of $2.9 million to the Department of State Health Services for the Texas Cancer Registry. Within that budget, there's $19 million committed to operations and another $277 million available for grants. The last item there is on the debt issuance history, and CPRIT issued $162.5 million in commercial paper notes during FY15 through the TPFA. On November 5th, we issued another $57.6 million, and that brought our total debt issuance to date of approximately $606.4 million. So with that, I'll ask if there are any questions.
Questions, comments? Mr. Angelou?
I noticed that the rent expenditure for 2015 is nearly half of what we've been spending. What's the reason for that?
We are moving to state office space as of March, so we will not be paying any rent.
Okay, no rent. So
no
this
rent.
Is, and what is the $215,000 on the 2015 operating budget? It has a line item rent.
Oh, that's for the Houston office.
Oh, okay.
And we are paying part of the year this year.
Okay.
Through February, we are paying rent for our current location in commercial office space.
Thanks.
If you'll recall, the move to the state office building is not free. We spent, I think, right under $1 million for renovation costs for it, but it's clearly a long-term savings to the state by us doing that. So we took a hit this last year, but it should wind down.
Can you remind me one more time, in a very general way, we start with 300, we have 3 that goes to the registry, more or less, 297, and then you've said in the second line item here, it comes out to about 278 available for, I don't know if you've got this page in front of you, about $278 million available for prevention, product development, and research grant awards, and it comes out to about 20. I got 12 was for administration, it leaves about 8. Where's that other 8 in general, very general terms? I just was trying to get a sense of the math if I'm missing it. Again, we have about 297 and about 278 is I think what you've said is available in the, I'm on page 7 of our,
Are you on the FY15 operating budget?
I believe so.
Yeah, there's, we actually have $19 million committed for award or operations between grant review and award operations and then indirect administration.
I'm sorry. Okay, thank you. So it moves from 12 more or less to 19 this year, and is that mostly from our grant administration side?
That's grant, yes. That's and then all of the contracts for internal. Well, for actually this doesn't include internal audit, but our other legal services and those award.
Okay, thank you.
Those contracts.
Any other questions? Thank you, Ms. O'Connell. So let's move on then to item 8, Chief Prevention and Communication Officer Report. Dr. Garcia, tabs 5 and 14. Good morning.
Good morning. So under tab 5, I'll just give you a highlight of some of the key activities in communication over the last quarter. And I think you know that since the end of August, we've had a vacancy in the communications team. And so the team has consisted of me with the very able support of Han Public Communications and Ramona Magid. So I want to especially thank Ramona for stepping in and helping, adding to her responsibilities, helping with the website and a lot of other activities. But We are both very happy to have Jeff Hillary on board. It's about his third day, so very glad to have him here.
Ask him the tough question.
Yes. He's ready to send out all of our press releases, our website updates as soon as you approve awards. So he's already jumped in. In terms of what is in your tab, we have summarized some of the CPRIT coverage that CPRIT's received August through the end of October and attached a few key articles for you. These articles are really the result of work that the communications team has done, either working through sending out press releases or through securing coverage with reporters. I think you know that we also require our grantees to list us as a funding source, and they are very good about sending out press releases when they have articles published. So that's where a lot of what you're seeing on a daily basis comes from. Under some of our messaging activities, rather than hand out the fact sheets and the talking points at this meeting as we have in the past, we're going to wait and update those with today's statistics so that you'll have the most current, and we'll mail those to you right after the meeting. At the same time, we've been working on a slide bank that's just a general overview of CPRIT, and anyone who's doing a presentation can use that as a starting point. We also want to add to that slide bank the program priorities, and so this slide bank will be updated quarterly as well with current statistics. Anyone can use it and pick and choose slides from that to craft their presentation. So we'll send you a copy of that with the fact sheets and the talking points. We're also working on the required annual report that's due at the end of January. But this year we want to do something in addition to that. We want to create an achievements report and really a piece that will highlight the work and the progress that our grantees are doing and give us a little more room and flexibility to do that. And so we see that as a companion piece to the required annual report, which has a format that's really dictated to us, and we can't do a lot of creative things with the annual required report. As David mentioned, we helped compliance with some of their videos. You'll be seeing us roll those out on the website. And I think the last point I'll make, the last time I reported to you, we told you about some discussions with PBS, and we've had some exciting developments on that front. We've been working with them and decided to do a screening of the Ken Burns documentary on the Emperor of All Maladies. That would take place at the Capitol Extension Auditorium here on March 25th in the evening. Wayne, just this last week, was able to secure legislative sponsorship for us so that we could hold it here at the Capitol. And so the way that will work, it's a 6-hour documentary over 3 days, but what we're going to do is screen.
She's really camping around.
Right.
It is a Ken Burns.
Bring your sleeping bags. We will do a 30-minute clip screening of the documentary in advance of its release. Its release would be on March 30. And then would have time after that for a 30-minute panel discussion, Q&A. So right now we're working on the details, see how that would work, what we would do with that 30 minutes. And we would invite legislators and their staff. We'd invite the cancer advocacy organizations. And we're still talking about how much we open it up to the public. So more to come, but I'll keep you posted on that. That was all I was going to do in terms of an update on communications. There's another item to take up on the
please.
conference, unless there's questions about.
Questions on the communications update?
Thank you, Becky. Just a couple. Were you going to talk about the 2015 conference separately?
That's coming.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll hold my
Hold
comments
off on that,
to you.
okay? And I believe
Apologies,
that,
and I believe this is under tab 14, I
Tab
should have said, and there's a budget
yes.
behind that, the last page of what's on tab 14.
So under tab 14, you have our recommendation to proceed to plan a 2015 conference and to issue a contract with the hotel, the Renaissance Hotel. By way of background, I think you know we've held 3 conferences in the past in 2010, 11, and 12. Each one of those conferences attracted about 850 people. Most of those attendees were our grantees. About 2/3 of them were researchers, 1/3 of them public health, community workers, community professionals. We are proposing a full 2-day conference. The dates would be November 9th and 10th, 2015. In terms of format, we are budgeting for up to 4 keynote speakers that we could invite and actually pay to fly in. The rest of the program would be our grantees presenting their work. And they would do this either through oral presentations, oral abstracts, poster presentations, other kinds of sessions that we design for them to network and speak to each other and learn from each other. The afternoons would be divided into 3 tracks, one for each program, research, prevention, and product development, so we could really structure the program to the audience's interest. In terms of the venue, we did release an RFP, and we had one response from the Renaissance Hotel. At the Renaissance Hotel, we've used the last 2 conferences, and it has worked very well for us. It's over in the Arboretum area, and that has worked really well for us. The budget, I've provided a spreadsheet for you, but I'll just highlight some of the major costs. We estimate that the total cost to be $305,000. Registration fees will offset a portion of the cost, but any of the remaining costs CPRIT would be responsible for. The largest line items are food and beverage at $132,000, followed by meeting planning services at $75,000 and meeting decor at $25,000. And I'll explain each one of those a little bit because those are the largest line items. Food and beverage, of course, is a variable cost, and we as a state agency cannot pay for food and beverage, but that will be recovered through the registration fee. Even the lowest registration fee would adequately cover the food and beverage cost. Then the meeting planning services are just based on what we've paid for in the past in terms of meeting planning services. We need additional staff to help us implement this and work with the hotel on all the logistics. There's a lot of detail that goes into putting on a conference. And then the meeting decor sounds high, but we're not going to be having fancy ice sculptures or anything like that. The meeting decor, $21,000 of that $25,000 is for the poster session. The last couple of conferences we have approved about 400 posters being presented, and so you need all the big bulletin boards, you need the signage, you need the labor. There's a lot of expense that goes into holding a poster session, but it is a very popular feature of our conference and really one very common feature in a lot of medical conferences. The hotel contract, I put a few bullet points about the hotel contracts. As is customary with hotel contracts, you do need to guarantee a minimum of certain expenses like food and beverage, and guarantee a certain percentage of room occupancy in order to get some other cost savings from them. If we don't meet those minimums, then they might charge us for meeting space. Right now there is no charge. So there's things like that. And as you know, with a conference, these are all variable costs and estimates at this point, and we're just basing it on our history with the last couple of conferences. With that, I'll answer any questions about the conference proposal budget.
Questions, anybody?
Thank you, Becky. That was good.
Thank you.
A few questions.
Will the reviewers for product development or research, or do they attend this meeting?
We have invited them in previous years, and we have actually supported them coming in previous years. I pared this budget down so much so that the cost for CPRIT would not be much over $100,000, that they are not included in this budget in terms of offering them assistance to fly in. And of course, we would invite them to come on their own.
Okay. I was just thinking that maybe the day before you could have, instead of flying them all into Dallas for a meeting, they could fly into Austin for their regularly scheduled meeting. It could be coordinated and then be there at the same time. Just an idea.
For peer review, if the timing worked out. But I did pare the budget quite a bit. So.
Another one is, are the grant recipients required to attend?
They are very strongly encouraged to attend. They can send up to 2 people from their program, from their grant, use the funds from their grant to send up to 2 people. Now, many of the institutions will send many more than the 2 people, but they are very strongly encouraged to attend. And we get a lot of grantees.
Do you think the grant recipients should be required to attend?
With schedules and other events going on, I think it's difficult to require. I think we do get a very strong showing and a very good attendance as is.
Okay. Keynote speakers, I noticed the budget line was $12,000. That's $12,000 in aggregate, not $12,000 per.
Correct.
Were you thinking in terms of scientific speakers or public policy speakers or social comment speakers? What kind?
All of the above. We have had, usually each program will pick a keynote speaker, at least one, if not more. For example, for the prevention program, we had the head of IOM present to us, and we had Brian Drucker present at another conference. So we will, as we have not begun planning the agenda yet, but put in the budget to invite at least 4 people from out of state and pay them honorary to speak to us.
Just one other comment. I was wondering, by the way, I really like the structure that you laid out, but I was wondering if there should be a symposium for the tech transfer offices of the universities in Texas. I find it curious that almost every day, usually several times a day, I get a call from a tech transfer office about a cancer technology from places in Boston and California and London. I've never got a call from a tech transfer office in Texas. Now, maybe that says more about me than the tech transfer offices. But if we're talking about commercializing the inventions for which CPRIT is putting millions and millions and millions of dollars into universities, it's the tech transfer offices that are in the middle of this to commercialize it. And it just seems that they're in the middle and they need to be involved.
Right. I think as we get into planning each track and each segment of the conference, those are all wonderful ideas we'd love to talk to you about. Any other ideas you have you'd like to see. I know the last 2 conferences we had, one of the very popular sessions in product development was the company showcase, where each company presented what they were doing, and that was standing room only. It was very well attended, very well received. So,
and just one thing, is there going to be as we're talking about investment into these companies, is there going to be a venture symposium?
A separate symposium from...
No,
a track.
A track.
Oh, a track. I think those are all ideas that I hope you will share with Tom.
I think we ought to put him on the
As we
planning
start to
committee.
plan.
I was going to make a nomination.
How many more committees? But I guess as I looked at the outline, it seemed like
These are all great
a
ideas.
very interesting, academically oriented meeting, which I think is great, by the way. But that's not what we're entirely here for, is for academics.
So
We're now getting
one
into
whole
the
track.
fun part. Up to this point, it's been stressful trying to figure out how it gets paid for and where and when can we have it. The calendar presented an enormous problem. In fact, this will be right before an Oversight Committee meeting, and we'll just have to figure out how to deal with it. But most people wanted to come to Austin, and Austin is a heck of a busy place to try and put on a conference during the fall. And we're just happy to get to where we are today. But now the fun stuff starts. Becky, I interrupted you.
No, that was, I was starting to say each program has a track. And so within that track, you're really free to design that 2 days however you want to. So I think what the product development people are interested in are going to be very different than the prevention communities. So that's why we kind of split it up. So each audience gets something that they want.
Thank you.
Real quickly, Becky, to clarify, you talked about grantees bringing people, some bring two and some bring many. They can only use their CPRIT funds to bring two.
Correct.
Thanks.
Any other questions? As you said, I believe each subcommittee, product development, scientific research, prevention, will carry this as an agenda item most likely through the rest of the year, or through the year as this develops. And of course, we'll want to get an active update each time we meet. And thank you, Dr. Roosevelt, again. Great ideas, and I'm sure that, again, they've taken notes, and now that'll be an agenda item when you all meet in early January in your next subcommittee meeting. Anyway, all right. So we need to have a motion, if there's no other questions. The motion is basically to direct CPRIT staff to go ahead and proceed with the conference planning, and then also to proceed with a contract with the Renaissance Hotel as they respond to the to RFP. Is there something else I'm missing?
Yeah, based on the budget estimate.
Based on the budget estimate that you've seen here. So again, a motion to ask staff to proceed with the conference planning, and a motion to proceed and contract with the Renaissance Hotel based on the budget you've seen. Is there a motion? Thank you. Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Thank you. So we'll move on. Again, Dr. Garcia and Mr. Roberts will continue on tab 6. It's to discuss the program priorities project, and let me just begin that by saying thanks to you all, especially Becky, to be having been the leader of this, or the quarterback, probably not the right analogy, but anyway, we appreciate your guidance through this and your coordination and leadership through this process. It's been a large and lengthy process, but a good process.
Thank you. Well, under, tab 6 now, just an update over what has happened in the last couple of months. I think you remember well the September 3rd meeting. That was a lot of fun. From there, we drafted a report that was put up for public comment in October, public input. That comment was summarized for you and appears in this tab, as well as a couple of other pieces, one from the Childhood Advisory Council, one from Livestrong that came in that comment period as well. Then just this past week, our subcommittees, each program subcommittee met and reviewed the input and had an opportunity to make any additional revisions. So what is in your packet was the original draft that went out in October, but you should have as a handout some of the red line changes, and they're really minor. Does everybody have the red line changes?
Should be draft in your packet, I believe.
Kind of tucked
And it's
tucked
got,
in your agenda packet.
it should have loose tab 6.
Right.
Since we were just meeting with the subcommittees last week, we didn't have time to put this in your packets, but I think the first changes are on page 5 You may wonder why we struck out that last phrase in that second paragraph, and it was because we felt it was already covered in the product development bullets, and that really that has moved, the early translational work has moved from research into product development, so we struck that. Some of the other changes are just based on feedback that we've received, and I would focus on the principles and the content that's in the boxes. That's really what makes up the priorities that we will use going forward. The rest of it is background information.
Chairman, can I ask, can we just talk for a moment, and maybe Dr. Kripke would be part of the conversation as well, on the recruit outstanding cancer researchers to Texas. I'd just like to throw out for consideration that be also influenced by our priorities, and not be a standalone initiative uninfluenced by our priorities. And it's not to say that we turn down some extraordinary opportunity for relocation if it's merited outside of those priorities, but I'd like us to just consider whether we shouldn't have those priorities influence who we encourage, how we try to identify candidates for recruitment.
Good morning. I'm Dr. Kripke.
Good morning.
With the recruitment awards, I think it's a given that we want to emphasize areas that are on our priority list. What two things need to be done in order to achieve that. One, we've already started to do, which is to have that discussion with the Scientific Review Council, which is the group that reviews those. And the second thing is, I think the RFAs for those awards will have to be tweaked some, modified slightly to indicate that we are particularly interested in recruiting candidates in these specific areas. So those are the kind of two action items that we have in that regard.
Right. Well, that sounds positive to me.
Thank you. Any other questions? Dr. Garcia, were you through presentation-wise?
Yes.
I'm sorry.
I'm just wondering, for the future, do we anticipate that your annual reporting to us will be modified in any way such that it is showing us whether we are meeting these goals and these priorities?
That's a great question, and I would have to answer affirmatively to it. I haven't thought exactly how we would do it, but because you just asked the question. But we certainly need to, and the reason why I'm going slow here is we're going to be using these priorities to issue RFAs based on an excellent discussion at the Prevention Subcommittee. I think we're going to be identifying awards that are being brought to you as which priorities they address, if they do. They won't all, but we will identify them. And to be honest with you, this project has really expanded out to much more than I envisioned when it began. This is going to guide not only the issuance of RFAs, it's not only going to educate people on how what our priorities are, but it can and will be used to document our progress towards meeting them. And I'm thinking right now we've got this annual report due in 2013. I'm not sure how quickly we can incorporate them. They'll be reported on in the report, but to use metrics, I think, as you're describing. But let us as a staff think it over and discuss it with you folks in the subcommittees, but this is a long-winded response to say, yes, I think we ought to do that.
Could I say something, Mr. Chairman? In the prevention subcommittee discussion on the phone, I guess it was last week, we discussed specifically about the idea of when proposals do come before us with a recommendation of staff, that they would address the issue of how this fits into our priorities, that just be part of the report. And Wayne in the committee talked about that. So in addition to, I think your thought of also summing it up at the end of the year and seeing how we've done, but actually what we talked about in the prevention was incorporating it in the presentation on each of the recommendations as well, which I think that might be a good thing for all the committees to consider.
Yes, yes. We just to reflect on that, in the Scientific Research Committee, we've had somewhat of a similar discussion, just wondering how the priorities will surface themselves. And I think what we're all saying is, I'll just again repeat what we've sort of said, that maybe at the subcommittee level we'll ask each to have as part of their process, a general comment about how we surface these priorities up into the work of that subcommittee, and then B, love that what you just said, Pete, the idea of maybe for each group of grants that would come through and be reviewed by a subcommittee, sort of map those to one of the priorities that we've discussed as part of the process. And anyway, so I think we'll figure out at the subcommittee level how to formalize that. But that sounds like how the process will work. And I guess the other thing is that eventually that surfaces itself in an RFA, for instance, and so that'll be also part of this process that we'll be sort of defining, I think, maybe in our next set of subcommittees. Fair? Okay. So are there any other questions or thoughts before we entertain a motion to accept the program's priorities project as our program priorities? Hearing none or seeing none, so is there a motion then to adopt the program priorities report as indicated?
So moved.
Is there a second? Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. So thank you very much again, Dr. Garcia, for doing that and completing that work and leading it. And then congratulations again to the team for having participated in really, I think, a great discussion over the months. And the good news is that we just passed that. The bad news is that we have to now start again for next year. So I'll give you a few weeks off, and you can tell us how we're going to do that starting then.
It'll be a much briefer project next year, I believe.
Good.
Don't you, Wayne?
No promises. So let's continue. I believe we're on to item 10, tab 7, which is the Chief Prevention Officer Report and Grant Award Recommendations. So we'll stay with Dr. Garcia to present these.
Tab 7, just a very brief report on prevention program activities. I'm going to be presenting in just a minute 5 projects that we are recommending for approval. In terms of the ongoing work for the next cycle, we released 4 prevention RFAs in September. Those are due to close in December 4th, coming up soon. When we released those RFAs, we held a webinar to have potential applicants have the opportunity to ask questions about the RFAs, and we were very pleased with the attendance. We had over 100 people sign up for that and ask a lot of questions. In other activities, Ramona and I have been scheduling visits with our grantees. We visited 5 grantees in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. I visited one program in South Texas a couple of weeks ago, and I was there for the Lead Texas Conference. And we have 2 scheduled at A&M this next week, coming week. And really, this is our first foray back out into the community after the moratorium, and visiting with our grantees and touching base and really understanding the excellent work that they're doing and just how difficult some of their work really is. I would encourage you at any time, if you want to go with us, to visit some of these grantees, especially some of the prevention work that's happening on the ground. We'd love to have you join us. With that, I think I will you can read the rest of that update. I will turn to the presentation of the grant award recommendations, if that's okay.
Please.
Okay. So we did issue 2 RFAs, the Evidence-Based Prevention Services RFA and the Competitive Continuation Expansion RFA. Those were released in March. We started this process with 16 applications that were submitted in July, and now we are ending this cycle with 5 grants being recommended for a total of about $7.3 million. This is our Prevention Review Council. All 3 have been with us from the very beginning, but we're sorry to report that Dr. Green is retiring and leaving the council, but you have his replacement in your nominations packet in the agenda a little bit later today. So the first slate that you're going to be considering is the evidence-based prevention slate, and there are 4 projects here totaling about $5.8 million. 2 of these projects focus on increasing HPV vaccination rates and screening for cervical cancer, and 2 of them address colorectal cancer education and screening. The first one from the University of Texas Medical Branch in Galveston is going to use a multi-pronged approach to increase HPV vaccination rates in adolescent boys and girls. The second one is from MD Anderson, but they are working in 4 counties in South Texas in the lower Rio Grande Valley, which is an area of higher incidence and mortality rate for cervical cancer. And in addition to outreach and getting people into screening, they're also going to look at expanding professional capacity, training community practitioners, partnering them with other experts through a telementoring project to really help the local community experts get up to speed on providing more services for cervical cancer diagnosis and detection. Then there are 2 grants to Texas Tech University Health Science Center, and both of these grants are providing colorectal cancer education and screening, but they're serving different counties in the Panhandle. Both of the counties include outreach through their community organizations and community clinics. They include education about colorectal cancer, and most of this is delivered through the community health workers. They will offer FIT testing and referral to colonoscopy and treatment as needed. Again, Panhandle counties, they're serving different counties, very rural, very underserved areas of our state. So that is the slate for the evidence-based services. The second slate you're considering is the continuation expansion projects, and we just have 1 project to propose to you here. It's from A&M University Health Science Center, and their project is going to expand access to colorectal cancer services to 10 additional counties. So now they'll be serving a total of 17 counties in the Brazos Valley area. And this is also an underserved and rural area. And this project includes education, screening, follow-up care through the use of community health workers. And a very important part of this project is also to increase the number of family physicians who are trained to do colonoscopy. So there is a residency training component to this project. Those are the 2 slates. In terms of geographic coverage, you saw one of these slides earlier, and the slide on, I guess, the left is the slide after the last cycle of awards, and we're only adding 5 projects, so you don't see a whole lot of movement here. We've really added 4 new counties, but with that, we are covering 89% of the Texas county, 225 out of 254, with a specific project for their county. We do have a couple of statewide web-based programs that are really accessible to every county in the state. So technically, we're covering every county, but not with something that is just specifically designed to address their county.
Dr. Garcia, do you have an idea of what percentage of the population? I mean, it's 89% of the counties, but do we know how much of the population?
I can get that. I'm
just curious.
Yeah, that's a good question.
It's going to be real high.
Yeah.
Is that, I'm sorry?
We're going to roll back 3 slides, and
Okay.
I'll show them a little technical. I think that's what you're doing.
Alrighty.
Roll back 3.
Yes.
One more, that one right there. It turns out that number on the third
On the
item there
slide.
is not 1.495. Your paperwork should show it's 1.467 million, and that's correct in what the PIC saw, and that's correct in the document you have before you, the letter document. And I'm just making the point that the slide looks like it's got a typo, or a couple of typos technically.
Right.
But nonetheless, the number should be 1.467 1,467,820, and for some reason we have up there 1,495,388. So again, pointing out that the correct number is in the document we have before us, and this was what the PIC approved, and so there's
We will.
just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you
in case
very
there's
much
any,
for. We will correct that before it goes
no problem.
online.
And the PIC has indeed approved the correct number, and so we wanted to make sure we were
Thank you.
moving in a cycle that was going to be perfect, if that makes sense. So any other questions or comments, or Dr. Garcia, does that conclude your presentation of the slate? So is there any discussion or questions for Dr. Garcia or Mr. Roberts in this context? So hearing none, at this time we'll recognize David Reisman, the Chief Compliance Officer, to provide the compliance certification. And I would note the last 2.5 pages of tab 7 are the pedigrees, we call them, that show who exactly was responsible for every single step. And again, that's at the end of tab 7, just in case you're interested to see them, members. Thank you. David, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is David Reisman, Chief Compliance Officer for CPRIT. With regard to the evidence-based cancer prevention award slate and the competitive continuation expansion grants award slate, I've conferred with the staff at CPRIT and SRA International, CPRIT's contracted third-party grant administrator, and studied the supporting grant review documentation, the pedigrees that you see before you, including third-party observer reports for the peer review meetings. I'm satisfied that the application review process that resulted in the 5 grants recommended by the Chief Executive Officer followed applicable laws and agency administrative rules. I hereby certify these 2 award slates for the Oversight Committee's consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Reisman. So we're going to move forward and recognize that the Oversight Committee plays a role in the grant award process, and therefore we're subject to the conflict of interest standards, of course. And we'll note for the record that Oversight Committee members have reported conflicts of interest with some of the applications to be considered. Specifically, Ms. Mitchell reports a conflict with applications submitted by the following institutions: University of Texas Medical Branch at Galveston, University of Texas MD Anderson Cancer Center, Texas Tech University Health Science Center, Texas A&M University Health Science Center. So in accordance with our rules, CPRIT rules, Ms. Mitchell is recused from discussion or action on these applications. Members, a list of the applications' ID numbers that are reported conflicts are included in your packets, and we'll sign this, I guess, at the end of the meeting to provide a certified copy for the minutes, as we've done previously. So are there any other declared or conflict of interest declarations that anyone else on the Oversight Committee would need to make at this time? Seeing none. So members, you'll have the list of applications, the grant amounts recommended by the PIC before you. The PIC recommendations need to be approved by 2/3 of the Oversight Committee members present and able to vote. Rather than taking them up individually, we'll ask for a vote of the awards and amounts as listed on page 3 and 4 of the letter before you from the PIC chair dated November 5th. So at this time, we'll entertain a motion to For the evidence-based, I guess we'll do these separately, sorry. So at this time, we'll entertain a motion to approve each of the PICS recommendations for the evidence-based cancer prevention services grant awards.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second? Any, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So hearing approval from over two-thirds of the members present and able to vote, the motion carries. And again, we'll note for the record that Ms. Mitchell abstained from voting. And so now at this time, we'll entertain a motion to approve PICS recommendation for that last one, the Competitive Continuation Expansion Grant Award to the Texas A&M University System, an amount not to exceed $1.5 million. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries with two-thirds or more. I note for the record again that Ms. Mitchell has abstained from voting. Having approved the PIC recommendations for the Prevention Grant Awards, is there a motion to delegate contract negotiation authority to the Chief Executive Officer and CPRIT staff, and to authorize the Chief Executive Officer to sign contracts on behalf of the Institute? Looking for a motion. Thank you. Second? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. So, it's 11:28. Let's go into recess for 5 minutes so everyone can get a drink of coffee, and we'll come back at, how about 35 after the hour, so we'll take a quick break. So we'll stand adjourned for 8 minutes or so. Thank you. Greetings once again, one and all. It's 11:53 on my watch, and we'll come back to order. We'll pause for just a brief moment while I think maybe we're all here. I guess we're all here. I was going to say I was hoping this is the beginning of the second half. It might actually just be the beginning of the second quarter. So we will try to move with pace, appreciating that there is lots of work and discussion to have. So I believe we're on item 11. Chief Scientific Officer Report and Grant Award Recommendations. Chair recognizes Dr. Kripke to provide the Chief Scientific Officer's report. Dr. Kripke and Mr. Roberts will introduce the Program Integration Committee's Grant Award Recommendations for the scientific research. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you. And in the spirit of your last comment, and also after looking at your agenda, I will be extremely brief today.
Well,
we have been very busy in the research program. As most of you know, we spend almost 3 weeks in Dallas in the end of October and first part of November with the peer review committees. We had, I think, a very successful round of meetings. We are just at the stage of analyzing the data to find out what the success rate was from various RFAs. And of course, this is the first time we've had our targeted RFAs, so we're very eager to see how they fared and which ones got funded and so on. So we'll give you an update. We'll give you a report on that, and also you'll be able to vote on those at the February meeting. So that occupied quite a bit of our time. We also have RFAs opened, which just closed this week. And so we will be distributing those applications to the various review committees so that they can start the review process again for the second round for this year. And those RFAs are for high-impact, high-risk grants, for core facilities awards, and also for the multi-investigator awards. Stunningly, we received applications from 42 multi-investigator awards, each one of which can have up to 5, 6, 7, or 8 projects within them. So this is going to be a very challenging review set of review meetings, which will come up in March of next year. But I'm again very eager to see what's in that and who's collaborating with whom. And so there was really a huge response to that RFA.
And if I may, sorry to interrupt, but on the other RFAs, you get a good number in?
Individual
the other two are capped. The core facilities awards are capped by only one per institution is allowed. And so I don't remember how many.
11 core facilities.
Yeah, there are 11 of those. And with the high impact grants, they're also capped. There's a limited number that can be submitted, and so we got 100 of those, and that's typical. That's quite normal for that grant mechanism. I wanted to just mention the meeting of the Advisory Committee on Childhood Cancer. It met last September, And I think, meeting was very productive. We had a number of people come into Austin for the meeting, and we had some people on the telephone for that. And they did two very productive things. They had a nice discussion about priorities for CPRIT and how to perhaps implement some of those priorities. And they also worked on their charter, the committee charter, which you will be asked to approve later in this meeting. And they very quickly put together a terrific white paper on cancers in children, adolescents. I don't think it actually includes young adults, but I think the spirit is there if it doesn't mention those specifically. And that white paper was, of course, put into the final considerations for the priorities project. Most of the recommendations for that committee are about how to implement our priority for rare, including childhood cancers. And so we've committed with the research subcommittee to try to hold a discussion, a substantive discussion about how we will go about implementing the priorities that you've just voted on, and we'll be using as some guidelines the comments that we've gotten from the Childhood Cancer Advisory Committee, as well as the University Advisory Committee report, which you've seen previously. So I think that's about all I want to say, unless there are some questions about what we've been up to.
Questions?
That's a good question. Dr. Cripp, you just listening to the excellent testimony by Ms. Craddock. She mentioned several times over the course of her testimony the need to, she used the word, encourage applications from the pediatric cancer research community, and said that there are people out there that they would be forthcoming with some guidance, some encouragement and support. Is there something about that community that has caused it to be less aggressive in seeking out support, or is there a problem out there that we should be thinking about?
There are a number of issues. One issue is that many of the people who do pediatric cancer research are clinicians, and so they are very busy, and they don't necessarily compete well with basic scientists who do not have clinical responsibilities. And so it's very tough to be a clinician scientist because of the time commitment and commitment involved. So that's one issue. But that applies not just to pediatric cancer, it applies to clinical research in general. With pediatric cancer, the advisory committee actually pointed out to us that they have not been competitive for things like core facilities awards, which would be very important for them to build infrastructure to do studies on pediatric patients. And the reason they provided is that because we limit these to one per institution, the institution decides whether the pediatric one request will go forward, or the request for a major electron microscopy, cryo-electron microscopy facility will go forward. And their concern is that pediatrics often loses under those circumstances. So they've made an interesting suggestion, which we will take up with the research subcommittee, which is to say, if your grant is restricted in terms of the number per institution, but if it's in a high priority area, you can submit more than the institutional limit. So there are some things, she's correct, there are some things, suggestions that were made, or that are things that we can think about. Another suggestion was to specifically have a targeted RFA for a multi-investigator research award targeted for childhood cancers. So there are things that we can do to meet her request, that we provide some additional impetus for people to compete and to be competitive. As you may recall, we've started in the first step in that process by putting out a targeted RFA for cancer in children and adolescents. And as I say, we haven't had a chance to look at the data yet, but that is underway. And there are some that have been approved that were competitive for funding. I don't know how many out of how many. That's all.
But that RFA that was directed toward pediatric cancer just closed, is that right?
It was just reviewed. The peer review process just ended.
Okay, thank you. Yes. Gotcha.
So we have the numbers, we just haven't had a chance to sort them out yet.
Gotcha.
But we will soon.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any other comments? Craig, please.
Margaret, good to see you. As I travel around the country to some cancer meetings, I've been really struck how the reputation of CPRIT has gone up tremendously over the past year.
Wonderful.
And a lot of that due to your efforts.
Well, thank you.
And Wayne's.
Thank you.
And I was just, and it just dawned on me as I was getting my mail for the ASCO meeting coming up, whether it's worth submitting an ASCO abstract about CPRIT, since the abstract, we're in the abstract submission period for ASCO, but to to present an abstract about what CPRIT is, how many grants, how much money, how many researchers, and what a great program that has been built under your leadership.
I think we can think about that. The American Association for Cancer Research is the other logical place to do that. I don't know whether how interested they would be in Texas-specific things, although I think the granting program is of interest to most people. I don't know. We'll have to think about whether that would be reasonable or not. And I would prefer to be invited as a speaker for a session, a roundtable discussion, or a session invited by the hosts to present, rather than just submitting an abstract.
Well, and of course, the two aren't mutually exclusive.
Yes, that's correct.
But if I recall right, and this not the sessions I usually go to, but there are sessions for our programs that are not like cancer research sessions, but about programs
and policies and cancer policy.
Cancer policies, and I think this would be in the sweet spot of the cancer policy.
You have to be a little careful, because not only have we generated a lot of publicity, we have generated a lot of envy. and
we live in Texas, and we want to continue that trend.
Yes. There is a little bit of grousing about all the wonderful recruits that we're recruiting away from other institutions. And it does, I must say, this has long been true of Texas researchers, but is particularly true now that CPRIT, now that we have CPRIT. People, I don't think, are necessarily quite fairly treated at the national level. When you have peer review sessions, the tendency is to think, oh, well, they have other sources of funds, so we don't need to be very sympathetic about research that's going on in Texas. So it is a double-edged sword in some senses. So I think we need to think carefully about what we would like to do in that regard.
But I think it does give a national platform to the state.
True.
And also as a platform for maybe other states to emulate.
Yes. I mean, most of the comments that we hear from people on our review panels is, gee, I wish our state would do something like this.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, that's right.
And to say, look, here's what we've done, because I don't think we've actually put this out in that kind of forum. People hear about us, they see us in various journals where we're cited, but the whole program in its entirety, research program, has not been described, so I think most people don't know the magnitude and the successes.
Yeah.
And it's just one place for a possible forum, since the abstract period is open.
Okay, well, we'll think about that. When does it close?
I think
tomorrow.
Margaret, would I do that to you?
Yes.
Don't answer that question.
Yes.
No, I meant I think it's February 1st or 2nd.
Okay. February 8th. Okay. All right.
Smart guy in the back.
Take that under advisement. Great. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to make a comment. We went through the list of the accomplishments for the last year. We're now reaching, I think, it is a mature stage for the agency. For all intents and purposes, we've been a startup for the last year. And we are now getting staffed up. We're not completely there, But we're, as you saw with respect to the delinquencies in reporting, we've gotten caught up, and David pointed out that now we can start doing desk reviews. We can start getting out into the field and doing training. We're now beginning to get into activities that are proactive and getting the word out about what we do in a non-offensive way, if you will, because I've heard the envy.
Rousing.
But that's moving into this next stage, and I'm looking for opportunities to do that. It's one of the charges given to the new communications specialist, and I just think there's a lot that we can do that we will be seeking to do.
I just have one thought to add to that, Dr. Rosenfeld, that our best marketing group are the peer reviewers, because they see the process firsthand, they see the quality of the grants that are going through the program, and they see what is getting funded through the program, and they are our best ambassadors out in the broader states.
I agree, but there's so many reviewers we have, whereas at ASCO, 25,000 people show up.
Right.
And it's possible that if an abstract was submitted, we get people's attention, say, hey, we need to invite these people to be in our symposium.
Yeah. Okay.
If I knew someone to call on the phone, I would call.
Okay.
I'll look at everybody.
Okay. Thank you.
Dr. Mulrow?
Morning, Margaret.
Hi, Sylvia.
Could you tell us a little bit more about the core facility grants? You mentioned that you can only have one per institution. How long is the lifespan of a core facility grant? And if you get a core facility grant in a particular area, that means even if you're 3 years into it, that institution cannot apply to be another core facility for something else?
That was about 6 questions. Let me see if I can
I'm trying to understand that program. And another question I have related to it actually is, do we proactively identify areas where it would benefit the state of Texas to have core facilities in that particular area, or we're just relying on the institutions to come up?
That's the easiest question to answer. Let me start with your last question. Up until now, we have not made any requirements as to what the facility should do. So the institutions have been free to say, we need a facility to do X-ray crystallography, and say we want to apply, this year we want to apply for that. We're building a program in that area, so that's what we're going to apply for CPRIT. They're only allowed one application per cycle. Yes. And the grants are, you can apply for a competing renewal to keep it going beyond the 5 years. They are generally 5-year awards.
And I have one last question. So to sustain a core facility, or to show that the core facility is being successful, do they have to show that they are delivering that service for what they're doing for all over the state of Texas, or beyond where that institution is?
They're variable. Some of them are core facilities that are within an institution, and they serve different members of the same institution. Others are regional, so that they provide a core service not only for their own institution, but also other things in the neighborhood. And so it really is up to the respondent to say what use they're going to make of it. There are very strict criteria for evaluating who gets one of those. Part of it is, who is your user group? How broadly is this going to be used? And then what's evaluated at the end is the productivity of scientists and physicians who use that core. Are they publishing papers in high-quality journals? Are they using the core facility to further their work and to get grant support for the scientists and so on? So it's a fairly sophisticated evaluation, and it's based on who's using the facility and how widely it's used. Yes.
And is that evaluation something that happens after the 5th year, or is it ongoing? I missed maybe if you said that.
It's evaluated at the time of the application, okay? And then they have to, just like every other grantee, provide an annual progress report in which they list all of those milestones.
Gotcha.
And then at the end, if they do a final report, but if they want to continue the grant, then it goes for a competing renewal, and they have to say, what did you do, what did you accomplish in the last grant period? That's true of all of those CPRIT grants.
I got you. Any other questions? Please, Greg.
Margaret, while you and Wayne are sitting next to each other, I have a philosophical question to toss at both of you.
I can't wait.
At a couple of our past meetings, we talked about the ratio of funds going to academic institutions versus those going to other pursuits, product development. And I can't remember what the ratio was, maybe 3 to 1. It was something, I just can't remember the number off the top of my head.
I think it was 80%, 20% historically. Does that sound about right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
70-30.
70-30, somewhere in that range.
And there was a discussion among the committee whether that's the right ratio.
Correct.
And within this granting period, I guess we're going to be voting on a number of funding sources for, I think it's all academic institutions, which will probably make that ratio even higher. And I was just wondering what you and Wayne think should be the proper ratio of money going to academic institutions versus the amount of money going towards building companies in Texas and providing jobs.
Well, we have tried to avoid that designation, and that was certainly part of the discussion of the priorities project, is when you get down to the last month of the fiscal year and you have to make decisions, you don't have enough money to fund everything, where do those decisions fall? And of course, we are, by everything that we bring to you today is going to impact that decision, because we are spending upfront money which will not be available to be spent at the end of the year, obviously. I don't think we've ever come to grips with whether, what is the right proportion. I don't think there is a right proportion. I think what we have to look at is the opportunity. Where are the best opportunities? Are they in science this year, or are they in product development this year? And I think those decisions have to be made on a case-by-case basis. And when you get your next portfolio to look at, which will have all the research grants in it, you will have to take that into consideration when you move those forward for approval.
I appreciate that response, but eventually some of us were put on this committee, and when we were nominated for the committee, told that the primary goal was to create jobs in Texas. And if I don't want to say disproportionate, but a high proportion of the money funds are going to academic institutions, there has to be a ratio at some point.
Well, Craig, I don't think you can say that all money that goes to academic institutions is not creating jobs, because there are lots of jobs created off of research grants, and research grants generate federal funds and other sources of funds, which creates new jobs as well. So I don't think you can say just because they're going to academic institutions that it's not of economic benefit to the state.
Let me add that I am unsatisfied with where we are right now in terms of the product development awards. But if you'll recall, we had this discussion a while back in this setting. There's a couple of reasons for where we are now. First of all, research got out the gate back in 2009 quicker than product development did. It's always going to be, or at least started out 1 or 2 cycles behind research. And we don't get the number of product development requests compared to the ones for the institutions of higher education. And as you're aware, right now we've got several awards that are pending resolution on the contract issues, which will help those numbers quite a bit, but it will also provide us with some guidance on how we ought to proceed in the future. I am very sensitive to the comments that were given to quite a few of y'all when you were appointed to this Oversight Committee, and there is a lot more that we need to be doing in the product development arena. That is so exciting to be able to see the fine research that's been done actually going through trials and getting implemented and getting to the bedside. That is such a powerful visual, and we have that going on, but there are clear opportunities for us to do more. And I agree with Margaret. I don't want to give what percentage it ought to be. You can do that as the Oversight Committee, but I feel quite a bit of pressure to improve that ratio, or to adjust that ratio, if you will.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? So with this, let's move on to, thank you, Dr. Kripke and Wayne, Mr. Roberts. At this time, let's ask that David Reisman be...
She's presented.
Have you...
You presented our recommendation?
You
I think I need
your,
to present the report, the awards.
I'm sorry. I'm ahead of myself. Excuse me. We were just going to move right on through that.
Yes. Let me just motor right on through.
Yes, sorry.
One of the things that our Scientific Review Council did in the last few months is to review 10 applications for recruitment awards, and we have before you today the recommended slate for awards. There were 3 applications reviewed for established investigators. 2 of those were recommended, but I have to tell you that one of them was withdrawn yesterday. And so which is a good thing, because it substantiates what we've told you before, that these people are very competitively recruited, and so this person has accepted a job elsewhere. And so we have lost that one. That was Dr. Gutkind, who is one of the established investigator awardees. So, Kristen, you'll have to advise us. I think we can vote on the 7 candidates that are being presented, and the total dollar amount would be $24 million instead of $30 million. So we have one established investigator awardee. I think you can read the material that we've put together for you. And we have 3 Rising Star applications. All 3 of those were approved. And we had 4 first-time tenure-track faculty members, the junior faculty, and 3 of those have been recommended for awards. So unless you have some specific questions about them, I'm ready to move forward with those. I can attest to you that, again, this is a sterling slate of candidates. They were all very highly regarded by the panel members, and again, they all say, gee, I wish we could recruit these people, and so these are all very outstanding people in their field, and the junior faculty are ones who are well trained and have great promise in terms of their future careers.
Thank you. So at this time, are we ready to have Mr. Reisman come forth and certify
Yes.
the rest of the 7
Take mine.
Scientific Research Award slates?
I'll be quick.
Thank you, Dr. Kripke.
This is David Reisman, Chief Compliance Officer for CPRIT. With regard to the recruitment of first-time tenure-track faculty members award slate, Rising Stars award slate, and the recruitment of established investigators award slate, I have conferred with staff at CPRIT and SRA International and studied the supporting grant review documentation, including third-party observer reports for the peer review meetings. I'm satisfied that the application review process that resulted in the 7 grants recommended by the Chief Executive Officer followed applicable laws and agency administrative rules. I certify that these 3 award slates for the Oversight Committee's consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Reisman. And I'll just note under tab 8, the last few pages are the categories, as we discussed, that would correspond to each of these now 7 rather than 8 award recommendations. And so we're going to proceed now as we have, and we'll note for the record that Oversight Committee members have reported conflicts of interest with some of the applications, and specifically Ms. Mitchell reports conflicts with the application submitted by the following institutions: University of Texas MD Anderson Cancer Center, University of Texas Southwestern Medical Center, Baylor College of Medicine. So in accordance with CPRIT rules, Ms. Mitchell is recused from the discussion or action on these applications. So members, the ID numbers, a list of the application ID numbers and the reported conflicts has been placed at your desk. We'll sign this, as we said earlier, at the end of the meeting to certify this list for the minutes, certified minutes. Are there any other conflicts that need to be reported at this time? So again, members, you have the list of applications and grant amounts recommended by the PIC for recruitment grant awards. The PIC recommendations, excluding the recommendation for RR 150012, will be approved to 2/3 of the Oversight Committee members present and able to vote, support the recommendations of the PIC. So rather than taking up each one individually, we'll ask for a vote of the awards as listed on page 2 of the letter which we've discussed, the PIC chair letter dated November 5th. So at this time, we'll entertain a motion to approve each of the PIC's recommendations for recruitment grant awards and award amounts. Is there a motion? Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. And we'll again note for the record that Ms. Mitchell has abstained from voting. Having approved the PIC recommendations for the recruitment and grant awards, is there a motion to delegate the contract negotiation authority to the Chief Executive Officer and to authorize the CEO to sign the contracts on behalf of the Institute? Thank you. Second?
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Now let me just pause and get back to my page. Members, you have a recommendation from the Scientific Review Council Chair, Dr. Richard Kolodner, to approve additional grant funding, be awarded for 2 CPRIT grants that were previously ratified, and Dr. Kripke is going to lay out these recommendations.
Yes, I think you've got the history of this in your book, and but apparently in the past history there were 2 grants that were reviewed by the scientific review panels, and they were not fully funded. They were given a reduced budget, and one was given also a reduced timeline. And there was an indication that CPRIT staff had inappropriately participated in the discussion about these grants. And so our previous compliance officer had brought this to the Oversight Committee and made the recommendation that these grants be re-examined after the first year, along with the progress report for the first year, and consideration be given to adding the missing funding that they were not awarded. And so that has happened, and both have been recommended for additional funding. For the Core Facilities Award for Baylor College of Medicine, the Scientific Review Council has recommended that full funding be restored, which means adding $1.65 million to their award to bring them up to a total of $5.3 million.
Thank you.
I should put my glasses back on. And for MD Anderson, the recommendation is that they be added. We add $2.8 million to theirs, bringing them to a total of $4.5 million, which is not as much as they had requested originally, but on re-review, the reviewers thought that would be appropriate. And they also voted to extend the granting period from 3 to the original requested 5 years. So that's what we are asking you to approve. Since there are dollars involved, and this is an additional award, you will have to approve this for us to move forward.
Thank you. Are there questions or clarifications that the Oversight Committee has? Okay, so approving the recommendations for these 2 awards will result in additional grant funding, as Dr. Kripke said. CPRIT's General Counsel advises us that the Oversight Committee vote is necessary to increase the grant funding above the original amount approved for these awards, and we'll note that Ms. Mitchell has a conflict of interest with regard to these recommendations and will abstain from voting. So at this time, we'll entertain, I'm sorry, are there any other conflicts? Yes, that need to be reported? Okay. So at this time, we'll entertain a motion to approve the Scientific Review Council's recommendation to increase grant funding for RP 130256 to $5.3 million. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries, and we'll note for the record that Ms. Mitchell abstained from voting. And at this time, we'll now entertain a motion to approve Scientific Review Council's recommendation to increase the grant funding for RP 130397 to $4.5 million and to increase the grant term to 5 years. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you. Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries, and again, we'll note for the record that Ms. Mitchell has abstained from voting. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to add in closing that to bring forward a Scientific Review Council recommendation or grant recommendations, there's a lot of stuff that happens behind the scenes, and I want to publicly thank Michael Brown for making sure that all of the things get done properly and that all of the numbers get entered and all of the data gets collected appropriately.
Thank you. Thank you, and thank you, Michael. We concur. Yes. Okay, so we're moving along to product development. Item 12, product development officer report and grant recommendation, and we welcome Mr. Goodman for the report, Dr. Goodman for the report, and to present the program update and lay out the PICS recommendations for product development grants. Dr. Goodman, good morning. Good afternoon, it is now.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. A summary of the activities in the product development program can be found at tab number 9 in your booklets. By way of highlights here, I'd like to say that there's been an awful lot of time that's been dedicated to a review and efforts to determine standard revenue sharing contract terms for product development grant awards. This has been a major concern of ours. In terms of progress toward this goal, a product development advisory committee was created greatly through the efforts and hard work of Wayne. And this committee has convened and is now in the process of advising the Oversight Committee's subcommittee on economic terms. A CPRIT revenue sharing policy briefing document was prepared and was communicated to this committee. They've had time to consider that and discuss it and give us feedback on that. Now, as of this writing, we do not have a time frame to complete the subcommittee's tasks, but I'll personally stick my neck out a little bit here and say it's my ardent hope and intention that we have set terms to put before the full Oversight Committee on or before its next meeting in February. Okay. With regard to grants that are presently in process, Cycle 15.1, the most recently completed RFA for company, established company, new company, and relocating companies. That yielded 30 grant applications that requested an aggregate over $280 million. 17 of those companies were chosen for on-site presentations. And the PDRC recommended advancement for a total of 9 of those companies to business due diligence and IP due diligence. We had a delay in the business due diligence efforts because we needed to renew our contract with ICON, and that now has been settled and satisfied. So those companies are now moving into business due diligence. We expect a number of those to be considered and then to be brought up at our next meeting of the Oversight Committee. Are there questions with regard to these highlights or any of the other activities going on in product development? Because otherwise we'll move on to the slate of translational awards.
Questions, comments, discussion? Okay.
Okay. To begin, the ETRA grants are grants that support projects that attempt to bridge the gap between very promising research that's going on in the research laboratory and actually the development of products that are licensable, out-licensable, and or new companies that can be formed based on university research. Any not-for-profit institution that conducts research is eligible to receive an ETRA grant. These are grants that are accorded to research institutes, but their intention is to go beyond that, to pull the product out of the research institute or pull the company out of the research institute and begin that process of formation. In order to do that, in fact, one of the new features that we've incorporated is the requirement in the first year of the grant that the PI and his team or her team put together an actual business plan, an actual plan that can be, in principle, sent out to venture capitalists or other sources of funding to say, here's our product and here's what we intend to do with it. So I'm very hopeful that they'll take that to heart, and we will be expecting that from each and every one of the grant awardees. It's probably important to notice, too, that the ETRA grant mechanism was recently transferred from the academic research program to product development program. This was done because there was the desire to get the reviewers in the product development program, who are a little more business-oriented, to actually hammer on these grants to determine that, in fact, there was something there. There was a there. There was a business there or a product there or something translatable. And that was the effort of the review committees that looked at these. In summary, briefly, for this particular grant program, the RFA was released back in May, and peer review took place in early October. There were a total of 46 applications submitted. The recommended projects are numbering 20 at this time. The total recommended amount is $33,856,975. In terms of a breakdown of the grants, there are 6 of these grants that involve what I would consider new therapies. 7 of them refer to new targets that are being investigated. Biomarkers, a very important area of investigation. There are 2 of those that deal with biomarkers, and 5 that deal with immunotherapy or antibody drug targets or targeting. So with that, I'll ask if there are any questions with regard to any of these specific applications.
Questions?
I just want to reiterate some of the comments I made at the Protocol Development Committee meeting, and not with great eloquence or taking up a lot of time, but I would like to see the early transitional ETRAs transferred back to the Scientific Committee, if this is the way they're going to be formulated. This is not to comment on their merit, just that these programs are very, very early and really not in the direct line of product development. For them to be on the road to product development, they should be on a direct path. This is my view. They should be saying, at the end of this, we will be in a phase 1 trial, we will be doing clinical trials with our marker, we will have our therapies from our targets completed. A lot of these were very early and really things like medicinal chemistry. So I would like the committee to consider that there really be no further ETRAs until there is a discussion between the Product Development Committee and the Scientific Committee to see where these type of grants should fall. And I appreciate your comments that somewhere along the way, these folks need to write a business plan. I don't consider that a very big hurdle. If you said at the end of this, they have to come up with co-investment, just like companies do in product development committee, they have to require co-investment. I think at the end of this, these folks should be able to raise money and document they've raised money from private sources. Anyway, that's my 2 cents worth, and I'm done.
Thank you. Are there other questions or comments? So I have a sense that may be a comment that would merit reflection and then further discussion, maybe not now, since I don't think we're necessarily prepared to go deep on that, and there may be a whole study and a discussion that needs to happen again, probably at the subcommittee level initially, and certainly, between Dr. Goodman and Dr. Kripke. And thirdly, I would think that we wouldn't want to I'd love to have that conversation without interrupting any pace of RFAs that are already anticipated or anything like that, because you suggested we wouldn't have any more, and I don't know that there are already more in the immediate planning, but I wouldn't want us to send that out or make that policy now necessarily.
The next group of RFAs for companies will be released on I believe the 1st of December. Then there's another RFA following that early in 2016, March.
2015?
Excuse me, 2015? I hope I said that.
Yeah.
2015. There will be a new request for applications then that deals not only with companies but also was anticipated to deal with early translational research applications as well.
But that should give us sufficient time in order
Exactly.
to discuss Dr. Rosenfeld's concerns.
But I guess I'd like some assurance that no additional RFAs will go out on ETRA until there's been a discussion and activity at the Oversight Committee level.
You have that assurance.
Thank you.
Okay. And I guess the thinking is that we'll have an Oversight Committee meeting, obviously in February.
In February, yes.
And at that point, that's not too late to recast or modify an RFA, which would be in a position to come
The RFA would not even be released until early March.
I just realized that I appreciate that there may be lead time, maybe through the anyway, the vendor. But if Wayne says Wayne said yes,
we can accommodate that. Yeah.
Thank you. Just want to
that can be
clarify,
done
because I think
that's not an outrageous consideration at all.
Great, excellent,
very good.
Thank you. Any other comments then before we move to the compliance certification? Thank you, Dr. Goodman.
Thank you.
So at this time, we'll recognize once again Mr. Reisman, the Chief Compliance Officer, to provide a compliance certification for the award slate.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am David Reisman, Chief Compliance Officer for CPRIT. I have reviewed the compliance pedigrees for grant applications for the Product Development Awards. I've conferred with staff at CPRIT and SRA International and studied the supporting grant review documentation, including the third-party observer reports for the peer review meetings. I'm satisfied that the application review process that resulted in the early translational research product development award slate recommended by the Chief Executive Officer followed applicable laws and agency administrative rules. I certified this award slate for the Oversight Committee's consideration.
Thank you. And once again, I'll point out that the back of tab 9 in our book is the 20 pedigrees that correspond to these, that in case anybody's interested in looking at them. Once again, we'll go through the process as we've done earlier for approval here. We'll note for the record that Mrs. Mitchell has a conflict with applications submitted in the following institutions. And let me read these again into the record. University of Texas MD Anderson, University of Texas Southwestern Medical Center, University of Texas Health Science Center San Antonio, University of Texas Austin, Baylor College of Medicine, University of Texas Health Science Center Houston, University of Texas Medical Branch Galveston, Texas A&M University System Health Science Center, University of North Texas Health Science Center at Fort Worth, and Methodist Hospital Research Institute. So in accordance with CPRIT's rules, Ms. Mitchell is recused from the discussion or action on these applications. And again, as we've said on page 5, you'll see members, the list of application ID numbers and member reports. Members, a list of the application ID numbers that members report conflicts of interest is in your packets. We'll sign this again at the end of the meeting. Is there any other conflict that needs to be reported before we proceed? Yes, Craig.
On the computer program, I had one conflict of interest with one company.
Okay.
Or with one program.
With one of the entities listed on this page 5 and 6. So, okay. So you'll be abstaining from that vote, although we're going to try to pass them, I believe, as a slate.
Which one was it?
So I'll ask for council's counsel. We'll do 19 and exclude it, and then come back to that. And so, I'm sorry. Yeah, thank you. So, if you'll look on page 5, members, we're going to vote as a slate on all of these product development early translational research awards that you see on page 5 and 6 They're listed there. We're going to exclude the second one, which is DP, application ID DP 150069. We're going to exclude that from this vote at this moment, and we'll vote on the other 19 as a slate. And so let's proceed there. So at this time, let's take a motion to approve the PICS recommendations for the Early Translational Research Award, and we're talking about those 19, excluding DP 150069. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. We'll note for the record that Ms. Mitchell abstained from voting. And now we'll do another motion, just as we did now, but this motion will be to approve the PICS recommendations as it relates to the application ID DP 150069. And we'll note that Ms. Mitchell and also Dr. Rosenfeld will be abstaining based on their conflicts. And so is there a motion to approve based on what I just said?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Having approved the PIC recommendations for Early Translational Research Awards, we need a motion to delegate the contract negotiation authority to the CEO and CPRIT staff and to authorize the CEO to sign contracts on the behalf of the Institute. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you. Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you,
Okay.
members, for all of those.
So we're going to move on now, if we're ready, to tab 10, which is item 13, appointments to the Scientific Research and Prevention Programs Committees. At this time, the chair will present the nomination subcommittee's recommendation related to the Chief Executive Officer's appointment to the Scientific and Research. Mr. Roberts. All right.
We have, they were discussed by the substantive committees, but we have Dr. Kramer being recommended for the product development.
We're on tab 10, yes. And so there's a list of folks there. Is it Dr. Kramer and Dr. Brownson? Thank you. So the nomination subcommittee met on the 14th and discussed the Chief Executive Officer's new appointments, and they're listed in the memo and on those, and that's tab 10. Is there any discussions about the nominations? If not, may we proceed to a motion to approve the Chief Executive Officer's appointments to the Scientific Research and Prevention Programs Committee?
So moved.
Second? Thank you. Is there all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. So I'm going to go ahead and we're going to proceed to item 14, and I'll deviate a little bit from here and just reference tab 11, and I'm just going to keep going. The Chief Executive Officer of this organization and every organization, you know, on an annual basis, it's a best practice to have a performance review. We've been thinking about this for some time, and first we want to, preface the discussion by appreciating the work that, Mr. Roberts has done in the last year, and again, we appreciate the complexity of the work that we've done and that he's led us through, and the great job that he's done. But nonetheless, we want to do. We think it's a good practice going forward to have an annual review of the CEO again, just as a matter of course. And so we've asked that the nominations committee, rather the governance committee, take that as some work that they'll do. And basically, between now and the next Oversight Committee meeting, execute that process, get feedback from the Oversight Committee, and then, create some feedback that we could all return back to the CEO, just as this, again, in the due course of his work and annual review, and then each year we'll do it annually going forward. So, is there any more discussion of that? Again, just a simple annual review process, no discussion. So we'll ask for that work to be done at the governance subcommittee level, and I don't think there's a motion that's associated with that. That'll just go forward, and I suppose what we'll do is have a motion, probably accept a report, and we'll probably deliver that report next time in closed session because it's an HR function. Fair? All right. So we'll move on to internal audits. We all there? Chair recognizes, I believe, is it Teresa Lynn? Oh, Priya's here. I'm sorry, Priya, who is here with the Grant Thornton, CPRIT's internal auditor, to present the next several items. Priya?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members of the committee. You have had an opportunity, I believe, to look through the detailed internal audit reports that have been part of your packet. So for today's meeting or discussion, I'll be using a summary so that we're not going into as much of the detail, which of course doesn't mean that we're not available to answer questions, but we've summarized as there are a lot of pages to go through. We'll go ahead and move on. I do want to recommend, though, that the Oversight Committee, for purposes of context and background, do refer back to those reports, as the PowerPoint presentation that I'm using does not have that level of detail. I also want to point out that the Audit Subcommittee has reviewed and approved all of the reports that you have in front of you. For today, then, we will be looking at the overall plan for FY14. We'll talk a little bit about the status of that plan. We will talk at a high level about the agency internal audit results. We'll talk at a high level about grantee field audit results, and then we'll look for your consideration, ask for your consideration of the plan for FY15. You'll see that we had planned at the start of this year to complete 5 audits. The audits were expenditures, the third-party SRA-managed information systems, governance, IT, and grants management. All of these audits were completed this year. At the August 2014 meeting, the Oversight Committee, you all received the reports and approved the reports for the expenditure audit and the third-party SRA-managed information systems audit. So for today, we will just be reviewing the governance, information technology, and grants management audits. For the governance audit, there were 3 key points that came out of this audit. And these actually present a mix of improvement opportunities for both the agency and for the Oversight Committee. What we saw was that there, first, is a need for the continued focus on learning about for the Oversight Committee's learning and understanding about the nature of the agency. When we performed this audit several months ago, it was relatively early in the tenure of the Oversight Committee operations, and while much has been made of the fact that there has been a lot of documentation reviewed, and you all have spent a lot of time learning about the agency, again, it was relatively early in the process, so it came to light that there was a need for continued focus on that, and I believe many of you actually expressed that to us. The point of that is understanding the agency's strategy helps with alignment of mission, and given the Oversight Committee's responsibilities as it relates to satisfying mission, we necessarily look at how agency operations then supports mission, and want to be able to present that back to you from an audit perspective. The next item has to do with providing information to the Oversight Committee so that you have ample opportunity to review information in a timely fashion at the right level of detail so that you can start to, or you can consider how agency operations does align with the mission or fulfillment of mission, which is the first point that we noted in our audit. And then lastly, given the nature of Oversight Committee responsibilities and accountability, we do want to look at the control activities within the agency. The way that these manifest themselves from a governance perspective is through policies and procedures that are in place at the agency. As you might imagine, there are other detailed audits that take place, many different types of audits that take place, and internal reviews that take place from a compliance perspective. But we do look from a governance perspective at the structure that has been established, and that does, as I mentioned, manifest itself in the form of policies and procedures. And one of the things that we noted is that policies and procedures do then need to be kept up to date so that the standards, if you will, are established against which the agency operations can be monitored and evaluated. There's been some much time spent earlier with the CEO and the Chief Compliance Officer talking about a number of the policies that have been instituted, a number of the changes to managing operations that have been instituted. Much of that was that came first for today's meeting, but much of that discussion actually supports management's response to the audit findings or observations that we've noted. So I might skip through some of this unless anyone wants to spend time talking about this. We've sort of covered it in advance of my portion of the meeting. So I'm advancing then to the next audit, again to provide a summary for you. And we're going to technology. The headlines with the information technology, with the IT audit, were around policies and procedures again, so that, again, there is this establishing of the standards against which the agency will operate. So we noted that there were some policies and procedures, a handful of policies and procedures that have been developed, but were in the process at the time of the audit of being approved by management and then would be disseminated throughout the organization. As well, we noted that the IT risk assessment had not yet been performed at the time of the audit, and that a number of security access reviews also had not been performed at the time of the audit. A couple of other points that came out of the audit. The disaster recovery and business continuity plans should be updated and tested periodically, and so we saw that there was some room for improvement there. And we noted that some backup tapes, which should be rotated off-site, were kept on-site at the time of the audit. We didn't spend a lot of time talking about these earlier with Wayne's report. So I may here again ask for your permission as to whether you want to go into any of these in any detail, or if you'll rely on your reading of the detailed internal audit reports, and we can take some questions at the end.
I would just note that I'll defer certainly to the wishes of the committee. The audit subcommittee did indeed, and again, Angelos, I don't mean to speak for you, but we looked at these in detail, and I think have some comments that we'll make at the end on how we're going to want to monitor these going forward. So I would at least add that comment and invite does anyone want to have more detail now, or you want to continue to hear the high-level summary as we go along?
Let's keep going.
Okay.
Okay. I will then turn to the grants management audit and just keep up with my clicker here. At the grants management audit, at a high level, we had some findings around the documentation that was submitted by grantees and which is then used by agency staff to validate and confirm the appropriateness of expenditures. We noted that there were no desk reviews of expenses that were taking place, again, at the time of the audit. We saw a handful of instances where there was no disclosure of out-of-state purchases or purchases from historically underutilized businesses. And as we mentioned earlier, we noted that the policies and procedures guide needed to be updated. Here again, I think much of, or many of these points were addressed earlier in terms of ongoing changes to policies and procedures and operations within the agency, as discussed by Wayne and David earlier. So here again, I think I'll go past the detailed, which includes management responses. Keep up. And we'll get to the grantee field audits. At the start of the year, we planned on performing 10 grantee field audits. You saw, I believe, this listing at the August meeting. All of these audits at this time have been completed, and the detailed audit reports are also included in your packet, in today's packet. At a high level, we noted some common challenges and findings across all of these audits, and so I think it's appropriate to talk about these at a summarized level because it was, they sort of coalesced around some common themes. There was some misinterpretation amongst the grantees around matching funds and the requirements around documentation and support for matching funds, or the matching funds requirement. There were some expense misclassifications. I think you may have seen that some of those were immaterial, but the audit does require us to go into some detail. But you noted that a number of those were immaterial. And also there was some confusion around expense reimbursement. So at what time, at what point in time can reimbursements be claimed, time of expense being incurred, or actually when the grantee has paid for that expense. The opportunity is to clarify this understanding or misinterpretation or confusion with the grantees, and there was some talk earlier again about the training that's taken place, the webcasts that are taking place, and the outreach to grantees to try to clarify some of this. If I could editorialize for a minute, it wouldn't surprise me if we continue to see this. There are many humans involved and lots of policies and procedures and lots of grants being issued or provided by different agencies. So there's ample opportunity for people to misinterpret. Before we get to the fiscal 15 plan, let me stop. We've now talked about the detailed audits of the agency that were planned and completed for this year, and we've talked about the grantee field audits that were planned and completed for this year. Let me stop there for a second to see if there are any questions.
Yeah, I would just make one comment again. In this audit subcommittee meeting, what we noticed was that the major findings, which you've outlined in the summary that you've presented and the next level there, we were interested to compare 1 year versus the next year, A, or B, to sort of have an interval kind of plan to get updates rather than wait till next year's audit to kind of see how we did kind of thing. So we're going to ask that these audit findings be put into something like an Excel spreadsheet, so that we can have at each meeting probably some sense of a quick review of where we are on the audit findings, the management response, which we're not taking time to look at today, and that way we have a little longitudinal visibility there, so that again we're not going to be this time next year before we realize we hadn't maybe addressed something as fully as we wanted to. So I would just share that comment. I think that's kind of what came forth from looking at these and looking also back at 13 is kind of what drew this. Some of the findings that we'd seen in 2013, still had opportunities for more movement in the 14 audit. So we thought that was a missed opportunity on our side. We just didn't have that visibility with all the other things coming. No big findings or no big pathology, but just something we noticed.
Right, and one of the things that we've talked about is going forward, looking at that year over year or period over period, given that the audits would occur for the most part within the same areas. There might be new audits being added depending on the needs and the interest, but given that audits will be performed over the same areas, it does make sense to look at it over year over year.
Yeah, thank you. So are there any other comments or questions before we go to the subcommittee chair to offer some motion or the preparation for that? Seeing none, hearing none. So let's recognize Mr. Angelou to provide the subcommittee's recommendations for the audits.
Mr. Chairman, the audit subcommittee met on November 10th to discuss the 3 internal audits as well as the 6 field audits of grantees that were completed at the time of our meeting. Subsequent to our meeting on November 10th, 4 other field audits were reviewed and accepted by the subcommittee. Therefore, the audit subcommittee recommends accepting these audits.
Thank you. So can we have a motion to accept the governance internal audit report, the grants management internal audit report, and the IT internal audit report, and the 10 grantee audits? So, is there a motion? Thank you. Second?
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. Motion carries. And it is my understanding that the audits will be posted on CPRIT's website, correct?
Correct.
Thank you. All right, we're going to continue then now for the internal audit report for fiscal year 14, and the internal audit plan for 15 will be presented. So you'll continue.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
It's a little bit of a circular logic. We need to present the FY15 plan to you so that it can be included in the report for FY14. Once the FY15 plan is approved, we incorporate it into the FY14 report and submit that as final. So I'm moving to the FY15 plan, which is also in your packet, and this will be, after your approval, will be incorporated into the FY14 annual report. The FY15 plan, which you have in front of you, is similar to the FY14. Yes,
so let me just, we're on tab 13 and we're on page 11, just for navigation.
The fiscal year 2014 internal audit, page 11.
Thank you, page 11. Please continue, sorry.
Yeah. And if you think it looks familiar, it's because it is very similar to the FY14 plan. The one change that you will note is that we did not include a specific governance audit. Those of you who went through the governance audit, and I believe it was most, if not all of you, recognize that the value in doing that is probably an every other year type of activity where we circle back to talk about changes and for you to comment on whether if there's been improvement in the areas that were noted as needing or that would benefit from improvement. However, having said that, as part of, and Mr. Chairman, you alluded to this earlier, as part of the annual audit, there will be a review of prior year issues and observations and findings. So you will see whether and how there have been movement and progress against those items without there being a deep dive audit in that specific area, if you will. Mm-hmm. So what you have in front of you for the FY15 internal audit plan is the proposed audits of grants management, expenditures, information technology, and grantee field audits. Any questions?
Questions? So I believe what we need to have now is a motion to accept the fiscal year 14 internal audit annual report. Now let me just hold on a second. Am I yeah, I'm sorry I don't have that version here. So what we need is the audit subcommittee chair to report on the internal audit plan for fiscal year 2015.
Mr. Chairman, the audit subcommittee met on November 10th to discuss the report. We recommend accepting the fiscal 2014 internal audit report and approving the fiscal year 2015 audit plan.
Thank you. So we're looking for that motion to accept the 14 report and the 15 plan. And we'll take the motion. It's second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Any opposed? Motion carries. And Ms. McConnell now will present the recommendation for contracting on the fiscal year 2015 internal auditor services.
Yes, and members, at the very back of tab 13, there's a memorandum regarding the authorization to proceed with contracting for fiscal year 2015 internal audit services. We'll be procuring those services through the Controller's Texas Multiple Award Schedule program. We estimate that the contract for those internal services will not exceed $200,000 based upon the cost of our audit services for this for fiscal year 14. So we just seek approval.
Thank you. Any questions or comments, members? So we'll look for a motion now to authorize CPRIT to execute a contract for internal audit services for fiscal year 2015 not to exceed $200,000 upon appropriate approval of the Legislative Budget Board. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, Priya, for your report, and thank you, Ms. McConnell. So now we're on to item 19, biennial conference. We did that, sorry. Members, agenda item number 19 was taken up earlier with the report on CPRIT's 2015 conference, so no other action is needed at this time. Sorry. So now we're on to 20, which is the Advisory Committee on Childhood Cancer Charter, tab 15. And Dr. Kripke discussed this work earlier. It's my understanding that the Board Governance Committee has reviewed the proposed charter for the Advisory Committee and recommends approval. Does Mr. Roberts have anything on this, or are we just going to move to approve the Advisory Committee on Childhood?
I have nothing further to add.
Any questions on the charter? This is again under tab 15. So hearing none, let's go ahead and proceed with a motion to approve the charter for the Advisory Committee on Childhood Cancer. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Advisory Committee on Product Development, somewhat the same. Tab 16, I believe, is going to be a list of those, and we'll ask Mr. Roberts to present the nominees.
Yes, I'll just make this very quick. I asked members of the Oversight Committee to provide suggestions to this advisory committee. I received quite a few from several of you. I also solicited some recommendations from other contacts that I have out there in state government, and I have in front of you what I think is an extremely strong group of counselors to you. They consist of venture capitalists, if I could use the phrase, hardcore venture capitalists, Office of Tech Transfers, along with wide experience in the bio-life sciences. I anticipate having another 2, maybe 3 to bring to y'all at the next meeting, but I am very comfortable in recommending these to you for your approval.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? The Nominations Subcommittee met on November 14 to discuss the 9 nominees for the Advisory Committee on Product Development, and that subcommittee recommends that the Oversight Committee approve the members as listed in your packet. If there's no other questions, we'll move to a motion. May I have a motion to approve the members of the Advisory Committee on Product Development?
So moved.
Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. At this time, the Chair recognizes our Counsel Doyle to address Agenda Item 25. Agenda Item 22, it should be, final orders approving changes to CPRIT's administrative rules.
And Mr. Chair, with your approval, I'll take up both item number 22 and 23.
Please.
Since they both deal with the administrative rules. As you know, members, you've been through this process before. In order to adopt rules, we have to first, the Oversight Committee approves proposed rules. They are published in the Texas Register, and we seek public comment. Then we come back to the Oversight Committee, incorporate that public comment, and then you take action to adopt the rules. Once that happens, then the rule becomes final. So this first agenda item, item number 22, is to adopt final rules. At the August meeting, you considered 1 new rule and 2 changes. The new rule was to adopt a process for the public to request a rulemaking. It's pretty standard procedure. The other 2 rule changes, one dealt with audits for public and private institutions, and made a change in terms of recognizing that these institutions could satisfy the audit requirement that CPRIT has by obtaining a program-specific audit or an agreed-upon procedures engagement. The other change was to the matching funds rule. It provided an additional clarification about counting subcontractor funds if they are also contributing to a project, how those can be counted toward the matching funds requirement. We published these rules for public comment. We received no public comment. So in accordance with that, I believe you have a memo from the Board Governance Subcommittee recommending that the Oversight Committee approve these rules and adopt them as final rules.
So should we proceed with that, and then we can do the next? So there's a motion. You've heard the description here, and we had no public comments, so we're ready to move to a motion to approve the final orders adopting CPRIT's rule changes and to direct staff to file the orders with the Secretary of State. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second? Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. And then now we'll pick up the new proposed rules that are going to be, if we pass them, then they'll go to the public comment period.
Exactly, yes. We're starting the rulemaking process with 3 rule changes.
Tab 18, sorry.
Yes, if you look at tab 18, the memo from the acting board governance chair, on the back page of that memo, there is a summary of the changes to be made. One of them is to allow the Chief Compliance Officer to observe and report the grant review process and report that to the Oversight Committee at the time of the grant certification process. We right now use a third party. This would add the Chief Compliance Officer to also be able to perform that service. He currently performs that service right now as directed by the statute for the Program Integration Committee and can serve as a backup for the third party if they are unable to attend. The other changes are to the matching funds rule, and as you can imagine, it was kind of briefly referred to when Ms. Sargi was making her presentation. We had a pretty substantial change to the matching funds requirement for public and private institutions of higher education. They are now allowed to use their federal indirect cost rate as a credit for the matching funds requirement, and so there is a lot of clarification that is necessary to make sure that the grantees understand what they need to do in terms of reporting to us and also interpreting some of the statutory requirements. So the 2 changes for the matching funds rule help provide some additional clarification. Again, we'll be putting these out for public comment, so we'll come back to you at the February meeting with any public comment that's been received, and that, of course, has to be incorporated into a final order.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? So the Board Governance Subcommittee Chair has a memo in your packet recommending approval of these changes. May we have a motion to instruct staff to publish the proposed Chapter 703 rule amendments in the Texas Register in accordance with the requirements of the Administrative Procedure Act?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item 24, Subcommittee Business, tab 19 is the Diversity Committee report. We'll call on Dr. Morrow to give that committee's report.
Mr. Chairman, the subcommittee met on November 7th and discussed research training grants and some ideas that we had to provide some focus on training for groups that are underrepresented in medicine and research science. We discussed some ideas, but do not have any firm actions to recommend to the Oversight Committee at this time.
Okay. Thank you for that report. Is there any other subcommittee business that needs to be addressed at this time? Okay. So hearing none, the next regular Oversight Committee meeting is scheduled for February 18th at 10 a.m. in the morning, and CPRIT staff will circulate a tentative agenda prior to that. Is there any other business that we want to attend? It's my understanding that CPRIT may schedule a special meeting before the February meeting to address approval of revenue sharing terms for product development awards. So we'll, again, pend our next meeting based on communication from staff.
If I could just ask you if you have your calendars, January is going to be tough, and we're not sure this meeting will be able to happen, but the 3 dates that look like the most viable right now are the 8th, Thursday the 8th, Friday the 9th, and Tuesday the 20th. I'm aware of a major conflict that will keep one of y'all away. So are there problems? Are those 3 dates possible for y'all?
8, 9, 20?
8, 9, and 20.
Okay, here.
What I would...
Can you have a cake on the 8th? Because that's my birthday.
Well, then I definitely will shoot for the 9th then. But if you...
It's my birthday.
Then
I want the 8th.
I'm not going to play favorites here. But if you folks could pencil that in at this point in time, and
I don't know if you've heard from everybody yet or not. I can't do the 20th or the 9th.
So that's...
Thank you. I'll take care of you later, Mr. Gibb.
Then what I suggest is let staff go back and reconnoiter. I don't think it's the end of the world if this can't be resolved until the February meeting. I'd like to get it done before the ledge begins, but we'll do what we can.
Are we pending those contracts that are in process? Are we holding them till we come to a decision?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And at this stage of the game, I recommend
I suggest that we say on the 8th, just raise hands who can make it, and that way we'll figure out whether we have a majority, how many, that sort of thing. 8th, 9th, 20th, and that way it'd be easier to write down who can't attend on those dates. But then at least you have somebody to work with, because right now it's just, I don't think there's a clear idea.
Do you want to do that right now?
Certainly, if you can.
Please proceed.
The 8th.
Anybody have the 8th? Anybody have a conflict on the 8th? Let's do that way. Conflict on the 8th?
I think Angelos did.
And Dr. Mulrow. And how about the 9th? Mr. Guerin.
And Mulrow.
And Mulrow.
And Angelos.
And Angelos?
And then the 20th.
I think that would work.
Okay, and then the 20th would be the 3rd. Who can't make it on the 20th?
Mr. Guerin.
Mr. Guerin. Thank you.
You can't call in?
Okay.
Can I call in?
I will send out a reminder to ask you to pencil in or shade in on your calendars. I'm not that confident that we're going to be able to be ready for you, but if we can, we'd like to.
Okay.
Thank you all.
Is there any other business before us today? Dr. Rosenfeld.
I'd like to ask Wayne if there's anything the Oversight Committee should know in regards to the upcoming legislative session.
Great question.
Please limit your comments to 30 minutes.
And I'll just say, I think we're going into it very well prepared. We've met with a lot of the members. I'm trying to set up additional members now that they're coming back into town. I do not have any indications of the legislator interested in opening up our legislation. And we, of course, will monitor that, but we'll get the LBB recommendations will probably come out towards the first week or so of January, maybe sooner. But right now, I feel good going into it.
Thank you. Let us know if there's support we can give you.
Absolutely.
Or whatnot, of course.
Absolutely.
All right. If there's no other business, then let's have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you. We're in adjournment.